welcome back to the Mind and Wellness Podcast with me, Gemma Merna. So, as you all know, I have recently become a hypnotherapist, but today we have the lovely Sharon here, and Sharon was my first hypnotherapist that I've ever worked with and kind of took me on this journey, this amazing journey of hypnotherapy. So, welcome, Sharon.
Hello.
I'm so excited to have you on. And yeah, as we've discussed before, hypnotherapy, like it's not really talked about, or if it is talked about, there's sometimes a little bit of stigma around it. And I just want to, get it out there more and how powerful it is because when I work with you, it completely changed my life. So, that's why I wanted to get you on, have a chat about it. Um, but yeah, how do you feel about that thing with hypnotherapy?
Yeah, well, hypnotherapy completely changed my life.
Mm.
I'd never really heard of it before I had the therapy.
Yeah.
So it was around 12 years ago. I became quite poorly,
Okay.
and I had chemotherapy for a tumour, and I was absolutely fine throughout the treatment.
Mm.
But afterwards, I began to suffer with really extreme anxiety. And it was quite debilitating. And when I had my second and third children, it was just through the roof. I had postnatal depression, I had really extreme anxiety. And I tried a couple of therapies.
Yeah.
So I'd had CBT, I'd had counselling, and I never sort of got the results I was looking for. And I was in a yoga class one day, and after Shavasana, I become really upset.
Mm.
And the yoga instructor said to me, "Are you okay?" And I broke down in tears. I said, "I'm absolutely terrified. I'm going to die and leave my children." And she said, "I know someone who can help you." She gave me the card. I went home and I rang the hypnotherapist. He didn't answer. I had to leave a voicemail, cried all the way through it. He called me back. I went in for my first session. And I can honestly say, working with Eamon, the hypnotherapist, completely changed my life.
And in what way, like, so if anyone's listening to this, like, what way would you describe that it changed your life? Because I know my answers to this, and I will say it in a bit from working with you, but what way did it change your life?
It helped me to understand the connection between the mind and the body and how what I was thinking and beliefs that I had were impacting how I was physically feeling,
Yeah.
which had never really been explained to me before. So I always felt that there was a power over me that I couldn't quite overcome. Embarking on the hypnotherapy journey, it made me realize that I had much more power over how I was feeling than I was ever led to realize.
I totally relate to that because I think it, especially if we're kind of talking about anxiety, and especially when we're going to fight or flight, the body takes over, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So you probably feel, well, I know I did, felt powerless. But when you do go on the journey of hypnotherapy, you realize that the thoughts you're thinking and what happens with your body, you then can do techniques to then take control of that.
Absolutely. So I'd been, as I say, I'd had CBT and they sort of gave me strategies, but they didn't resonate with me. One was to allocate myself worry time. And my mind, the way my mind worked was, well, if I could allocate worry time, I wouldn't feel the way that I do
Yeah.
24/7. So working with the hypnotherapist, I began to understand how every thought that we have releases a neurochemical into the body. This neurochemical creates feelings and emotions, and it all began to click. It was like, okay, I started to take more notice of what I was thinking without there being any type of criticism or judgment. It was really starting to get to know myself. We then started to look into sort of beliefs that I had, and what we call in hypnotherapy language programs that we run on. So the big thing for me was I had this fear of dying. When we began to look into it, it was the core belief was actually I felt like everything was my fault. So I didn't actually have a fear of dying per se. I don't want to die just yet. I want to live a long, healthy
Mm.
life. But the idea was that if anything was to happen to me, it was in some way my fault. And if I traumatise my children, it would be my fault. And this work helped me to unpick this belief, to shed some light on it, and reframe it, really, change the way I look at things. Because when we're overwhelmed, which I absolutely was at that time, our logical, rational thinking is completely blown out of the water. So I was gathering all kinds of evidence as to why things were my fault. And I'd done it for many, many years from childhood. And that was really the sort of the tipping point.
I start gathering evidence, and you taught me that, like, when we think a thought, our brain will literally go through the whole bank of pictures and memories to get that evidence, and then your body feels it. So then you won't move forward with life.
Absolutely. And the more that we feel it, the more that that thought, that program, that belief is justified. So it sort of builds momentum.
Yeah.
So even when we can consciously grasp that there's another alternative, there's a different way of thinking, the subconscious mind and how we feel is so powerful, we don't listen to the rationale.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, I'm still on a journey of learning this and kind of working with clients, but you've had, how long now have you been working as a hypnotherapist?
So I've been a practicing hypnotherapist for about 6.5 years now.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I remember my first session with yourself. So I originally came to you, Dinta, because I couldn't sing anymore on stage. That was kind of why I came.
Yeah.
But that, again, there's a lot more underneath that. And it was like my throat chakra had just completely shut off, but through fear, anxiety. And I remember my first session, and I think I was that much in my fight or flight when I was going into the like meditative state, the hypnosis. I remember saying to you a few times, I felt like I was going to go into a panic attack.
Yeah.
And that for me, like, it was scary. Those first couple of sessions for me were really scary. But what I liked about hypnotherapy instead of different types of therapy, because when I lost my dad, I did have some talk therapy, but I was the same as you. I felt like I just didn't get anything from it. I just spoke. And it's like, well, what you think, that's right. But I was like, I need something more. And I think why I resonated with it was because, obviously, being a yoga teacher, doing meditation, I love the fact that we finished off a session with hypnosis and I felt relaxed. And, you know, like, it's meditation with the goal, basically, isn't it? You know,
Absolutely.
so I really liked that side of it, and I didn't feel like I was in therapy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think also we put that pressure on ourselves that we, I don't know, maybe I did that. I don't know, I don't need therapy, because
Yeah.
you know, we live in this world, don't we, where people still don't see it as a tool, some people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember that first session and feeling like I was going to have a panic attack because I think I was just running so much in adrenaline that my body wasn't used to relaxing that much.
Absolutely. And the subconscious mind, its primary job is to keep us safe. So anything that threatens what we have developed as coping strategies is considered unsafe. So the body will respond in such a way. So it's really not unusual if somebody is very deeply in fight or flight or is overwhelmed, anxious, for the body to resist hypnosis or meditation. And I think what's so important about hypnotherapy is having a practitioner who is well aware of that and who can guide you through it, which is so important. But you're right, it's not a sort of a mainstream therapy here in the UK. It's sort of much more celebrated in America.
Yeah.
So my mentor, he trained in America in the 80s. He trained with some of the best hypnotherapists in the world. He learned the Sedona method, Reiki, and he brought all of this back to the UK. So when I was having sessions and I was seeing such a big change in me, I always remember my mum saying to me at one point, we went out for breakfast one day and I was laughing and joking. She got a bit upset and she said, I just feel like I've got Sharon back. And it made me realise that for such a long time, I probably was a shadow of myself. I was getting up, I was functioning, I was doing things, but I wasn't really me. And that helped get me back, which is so powerful.
Yeah.
So I was having sessions and I was so intrigued and passionate about it. I embraced everything my therapist told me to do, and I was reaping the rewards for it. And it was one day he said to me, have you ever thought about being a hypnotherapist? And I was absolutely floored. I was like, no, never thought about it at all. He said, I think you'd make a marvelous therapist, Sharon. He said, you've just got such an empathy for people, and you get it. And I said, can I think about this? And he was like, absolutely. So I had it was over the Christmas period. I went home and spoke to my husband and I said, Eamon's asked me if I'd consider being a hypnotherapist and he'll be my mentor. He was like, how do you feel about it? I was a bit scared. And I bit the bullet and said, yeah. And I went through all of my training, but with the mentorship of him. And I think it's what's helped me become such a dedicated practitioner of hypnotherapy. I take the responsibility really seriously. And my passion is for people to be empowered, to regain sort of themselves. And that's how I see it, because we lose a little bit of ourselves with traumas that we experience and challenges that we have. And it's about very gently nurturing people to feel good about themselves again.
Totally. Like, it's actually getting me quite emotional, because I always say I wouldn't be the person I am now if it wasn't for you.
Don't say that, because I'll cry.
Don't, I'm going to cry. Because I don't think I realised how far gone I was. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't think I did realise how far gone I was and how many walls I'd put up to protect myself. And each session, again, I was the same. I just felt better and better, and I had more confidence, and I was doing things that I loved again, like getting back on stage, singing, going for auditions, like not just going through the motions, because I think with life, I was just going through the motions, especially after going through grief, losing a parent. And I think, over 11 years ago, people didn't talk about it. People didn't, I didn't feel I could talk about it. Maybe it was just the environment, but grief was a bit like, okay, they've gone now, get on with it. And I think when I met you, it was obviously I came to sing again, get back on stage, but there was so much more under that I had to start to unpick. And it was like every session, I just started to feel better and better and better. And I was a bit like, this works. This really, really works. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for taking me on that journey. But I think it's that you do have so much empathy. And I remember saying to you, like, I was at a point when we were in hypnosis, I couldn't see a thing. It was black in my brain, but I could think. And you always said, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So it's that thing. I think when people do start on this journey, I don't know if there's any scientific belief behind this, but maybe it is that we don't see anything, where now I can see pictures in my brain. But I think it's because I've done so much hypnotherapy. At first, it was like it was shut down.
Absolutely.
And what would you say to that?
I think it's a safety mechanism.
Yeah.
I think it's the brain resisting any type of change. It wants to, the sort of the brain and the body work together collectively, and the body gets addicted to the hormones that we're releasing, the stress hormones, whether it's, cortisol, adrenaline. Sometimes we have a bit of oxytocin, serotonin thrown in. But for the vast majority of people, they're running on stress hormones because we tend to live a very fast-paced life. There's a lot of pressure. And as I said, we've got all of these past experiences and challenges and things that are going on. So we predominantly release more stress hormones than we do anything else. So the body becomes addicted to running on that fuel per se. So when somebody like a hypnotherapist comes along and introduces relaxation, introduces starting to work with the subconscious mind, we do face a little bit of resistance.
Yeah.
And I do think visualization is a skill. It's something that we develop with practice. Occasionally you get someone who gets it straight away
Yeah.
and can visualize. But it's not a regular thing.
Mm.
Some people really struggle with it to begin with. And I always say, if you can't see it, just think it.
Yeah.
When this is a non-judgment space, you can't do this wrong. Let's work with what we've got.
Because we all do think, don't we, in life, like we're doing everything wrong.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if like even with meditation, well, if I can't clear my thoughts, I'm doing it wrong, so I'm not doing it again.
Yeah.
And then you never get anywhere. But I felt like that with yourself. It's like everything was so gentle and everything's like, well, if you can't see it, just think it. And it's like, oh, okay, I can do that. And then you go more on the journey and then you do more. And yeah, it's unpicking it and then finding out what your programs are, what you're running on. And a lot of inner child. I really want to bring up inner child today because I think I said to you for about a year, not ready to go there yet, not ready to go there. And I think then when I started doing inner child work, that's when a massive shift and transformation happened and a lot of releasement. Now, for anyone that doesn't understand inner child work, because not everyone does, I didn't at first. I just thought, oh, it's a bit woo-woo, it's a bit weird. But actually, by working with your inner child, I feel like that took me to another level of healing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, anyone that doesn't understand it, could you explain it a little bit for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at it in very much layman's terms, we have the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And the conscious mind will grow with us. It will age. It will get wisdom. Marvelous. We want it to be the CEO of our life because it generally knows what it's doing. And then we have the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, whilst it records everything that happens in our life, it creates all our long-term memories. It's where we store emotions and feelings. It's the seat of our imagination. And whilst that collects what we call data throughout our life until we take our last breath, its emotional intelligence is around, or its emotional maturity is around age 7. So if we look at it in the sense that we're all really 7-year-olds running around in adult bodies, and the experiences that we've had in our formative years play a massive part in our core beliefs and our programs. So inner child is about connecting to that element of ourself, which every human being has. It's around connecting to that part and starting to sort of reflect on maybe some of those beliefs, those programs we're running on that are not necessarily helping us to live the life that we want, maybe not helping us to feel fulfilled or safe. I always remember somebody telling me one of Albert Einstein's quotes was, "Is the universe a safe place?" And he said it was one of the most important questions for us to consider. And generally we develop that belief of whether it's a safe place or not in our childhood. So if we've had any sort of challenges in childhood or adverse situations, regardless of whether it's big or little, it can really impact how we see and view life. So yeah, inner child is really connecting with that part of ourselves. And I think that is where a lot of our key healing comes from.
And I like what you said there, like big or small, because it can be just just a small thing, can't it?
Absolutely.
Because I remember in one of my sessions, I don't mind sharing this at all, we went back to inner child when I was in the playground when I was younger and it was own clothes day, and I've always worn bright colours and stuff, and I got teased for what I was wearing, and that was really holding me back in life to not like step into my power, not be confident, because I was trying to shrink myself. And I remember going back to that one, and we think, oh, that was just school, that was just childhood, just get on with it. But that was really affecting the way I was living my life, because that was a program with my inner child. So it can be, like you said, as big trauma, or it can be as small, I would say, as that, but it can really affect you.
Absolutely. generally, when something like that happens to us, it's not unusual for a belief to be formed in that instant. And it's as quick as that.
Yeah.
Somebody says something to us, and a thought is formulated by the mind, and it could be, I'm not good enough, or I don't fit in,
Yeah.
anything. And that can really have such a negative impact on us, because once that belief is formed, we will then search and look for the evidence to justify it. So the little girl on the playground who feels that she doesn't fit in, she'll carry that belief with her throughout her life. And any situations or circumstances that arise in her life where she feels that way again, it's like, well, it's because I don't fit in.
Totally. And I've took that into like every aspect of my life. Like looking back now, I've took it into every type of friendship group in a way.
Yeah.
And then when it's not worked out, because obviously friends, you're not always going to be friends with everyone forever. That's kind of like, oh, just because I don't fit in, because I'm different. You know what I mean? It's that. So it can be that. And I think that's where it's amazing to talk about this, because these sorts of beliefs do affect our day-to-day life. But this is where hypnotherapy can be so powerful and change those beliefs for us to live the life that we want to live.
Absolutely. Even recognizing where a thought pattern or a program comes from can have a massive positive shift in our life. It can help us to challenge a thought.
Yeah.
So if the thought is I don't fit in, once we've got a level of awareness of where that's coming from, we can then begin to challenge it. Well, actually, that's just an old program.
Yeah.
I get to either let that program run my life, or I can do something about this. And that is so empowering. And for me, that's what hypnotherapy is all about. It's about empowerment.
Yeah. I love that. And it's because I think when people aren't aware of the thoughts that go through your mind every single day, I think people can let those thoughts take over. And it's about recognizing what's coming in, what you're going to allow and what you're not going to allow. And we have control over those thoughts, don't we?
Absolutely. So whilst we can't control how many thoughts that we have, we can control where we place our attention. So we'll all have critical thoughts. It's whether we give it the attention that it's craving, because that's where our power sits. So coming here today, my inner critic was like, does anybody want to hear what you've got to say? And then the conscious mind of mine is like, this is such an important therapy modality. Everybody needs to hear about it.
They do.
I get to choose which thoughts I give my attention to, where I place my energy, what power I let them have over my life.
Exactly. And inner critic, that can rule people's lives, can't it?
Absolutely. I see people who have got so much talent and passion and knowledge, who are literally frozen by their inner critic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was me.
Yeah.
I think I was just couldn't move because of the no, don't do that because you're just going to show yourself up. Don't do that because you don't know what you're doing there. And I think it can control your life so much. But I'm so glad that you just shared that, like those two different thoughts that you had today.
Yeah.
And which one you listened to. And we all have these thoughts, don't we?
Absolutely.
Because I think when I was going through like my worst time of feeling anxious and grief, I thought I was the only person having these thoughts. And I know I'd shared with a few people who were close to me, and they were like, oh, no, and I think some people just want to guard it, which is fair enough. But I always said if I kind of got through it and healed in a way and got out the other way, I really wanted to talk about it to make people realize that if we do this work, we can live whatever life we want to live. And it's about not letting our mind control us.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an old saying, and it's, the mind is a fantastic servant and a terrible master.
Yeah.
And it really is true.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll remember this, Gemma. I often talk about our thoughts being like puppies that we need to train. And if we don't train them, they're going to pee everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's about, bringing in the consciousness, bringing in the awareness of the thoughts that we're thinking. We can't completely eliminate them.
No.
And nor would we want to a certain degree, because they can keep us safe. So if we are dismissing every sort of critical thought that we have, it could potentially put us into difficult situations. So we don't want to eliminate them completely, but we want to be able to decide which ones that we listen to, which ones we let have a really important voice in our choices and the life that we live.
Totally. I think that, absolutely perfect. I wanted to just touch on, as we spoke about programs, and I think this is a really interesting one. Programs from like our parents, our grandparents, or neighbors, you know, like kind of fears or, fears basically, or the way that we're living our life. Like there can be things, can't there, that our parents did, and we're like, why'd you say that? And then we hit a certain age and we're saying the same thing. And I wanted you to explain that a little bit, because we naturally we become the people we're surrounded by, we become those programs, but it's that we can change that as well. So can you explain that a little bit more about those programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So programs are basically learned behaviors. And the people we are spending the most time with in our childhood have the biggest impact on us. So we look at primarily caregivers. It can be teachers, friends, extended family. If we're involved in any type of community groups, they will all have an impact on our programming. If we look at it in a very light-hearted sense, and I say this quite frequently, if we look at Liverpool particularly, there's 2 big football clubs in the city. A lot of children are programmed from birth as to what team they'll support. So they're not given a choice. It's basically, and I did it with my children. Okay. So we're all Liverpool fans. My dad had all girls. So we were told we were Liverpool fans. It never come into question. Okay. I have 3 boys. They've all worn Liverpool kits from day one. But it's really interesting. That's a really light-hearted look at it. And, you know, my boys, thankfully, are quite happy to be Liverpool fans. But if we look at it in a more serious nature, this is what happens. We're told certain things, whether it's money doesn't grow on trees, times are really hard, don't trust anybody. They're all sort of helping to formulate what we will believe to be true about the world or ourselves or relationships. And that is basically where programs come from. So it has a massive impact. And this isn't trying to sort of look to blame anybody in terms of programs that we run on. It's having that level of awareness, because I do truly believe that everybody is doing the best that they possibly can, given their level of awareness. So if somebody has come from generations of thinking a certain way, that is their level of awareness at that time. Then somebody like myself or you come along in a family and start to look at things differently. And then generational programs start to sort of get dismantled. And that's a really positive thing. Often what our parents, how they parent us, will naturally impact choices that we make. So say we've got a mum or dad who think that getting a job in a bank or being a doctor or a lawyer is the sort of the optimal, you know, sort of praise that they can give. We will often find children will strive to meet their sort of parents' expectations, and it may not necessarily be what they've wanted. It really does have an impact on how we think, and it's not intentional. Nobody's looking to keep us in a box or to stop us living the life that we want. It's just that's the parents' expectation, their worldview, and it's naturally passed on to the child.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really important to talk about that, because if there's anyone that is listening and feels that way, or their parents, you know, that you can open yourself up to different elements of the world, can't you? And
Absolutely.
that's where hypnotherapy is so important, because we can change the programs within the brain. And it can be anything, can't it? From like smoking, fear of flying, to, you know, unpicking anxiety, overwhelm. And that's the clients I mostly work with, because I think it resonates a lot with what I did with yourself. And it does really, really work. It does, doesn't it? This work,
Yeah.
it really works. So if there's anyone that's listening to this and it's like their first kind of step into this work, what would you advise? Because they might not be ready really going to a hypnotherapist yet. What would you say to kind of, yeah, like the start of this journey?
It's a couple of options, really. I think going along to maybe some group sessions, whether that's a women's circle or a mind and wellness
Hmm.
event like what you hosted, Gemma. I know I do certain
Hmm.
workshops and circles. It can be an opportunity to sort of dip your toes into that type of world. Um, there's also online, there's a lot of stuff online. Joe Dispenza is absolutely massive. He is a real pioneer about the mind body connection and how we run on these programs. Lots of free content
Yeah.
on YouTube, and it gives you a bit of an insight, because a lot of the meditations that he actually puts
Hmm.
out there do have a self hypnosis element to them.
Yeah.
So it helps to start for people to start recognizing, okay, this isn't woo woo, this is actually scientifically led.
I'm glad you said that, because I think people still think it is. Like
Yeah,
the amount of people, do you have control of my mind? It's like,
yeah,
not at all.
yeah. Yeah, am I going to cluck like a chicken?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and this is why I really want to speak about it so much,
Yeah,
because we've got a modality that can really work and heal people and help people, but people still have this stigma of what some people have put out in TV.
absolutely. So for most people, their first experience of hypnosis will be stage
Yeah.
hypnosis, which is really, really different. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
It's nothing at all like hypnotherapy when we use it for the benefit of the client. It's recognizing that when you go into self hypnosis, it's just a deep meditative state. You have control over your mind and your body at all times.
Hmm.
And if you show any type of resistance, your hypnotherapist will work with you on that and will never push you where you don't want to go.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's about building that trust up with somebody. So if somebody was interested in hypnotherapy, I'd say sort of maybe have a chat with a couple of hypnotherapists and get a feel for them. Are they the type of person you feel you can work with?
And I'm glad you've said that, because it's all about trust, isn't it? The more you
Absolutely.
trust your therapist, the deeper you will go, and the results will be better, won't they?
Absolutely, without a shadow of a
It is,
doubt.
isn't it? Because I've come across a lot of people going, I've been for a session and it didn't work.
Mm,
I was like, oh, okay. Well, when you went there, how did you feel about the hypnotherapist? Oh, I'm not sure. She was a bit funny, but like I didn't like her. Or, do you know what I mean? It was
yeah,
that kind of. I was like, that's why, because you've not got that connection, and that's why I think it's really important for people to understand as well. Like, there's a lot that's out there, isn't they? Like one session heals you.
yeah.
I really personally don't believe in that. And I might be wrong saying that, but that is my belief. Like I worked with you for, a long period of time, and still do. And that's what I say to my clients, like one session isn't like that. Your first session is the lightest you'll probably ever go into it. And then each time, the more you trust your therapist, the more you trust the practice, the deeper you'll go, the more the results will speak for themselves. So I think that's a really important thing. If somebody's looking for someone, make sure you like your therapist,
Yeah,
or it won't work.
absolutely. The sort of the trust between the therapist and the client is probably the most important aspect of working with
Yeah.
somebody. Um, and you're absolutely right, Gemma, in terms of how many sessions somebody will need. It's a little bit like how long's a piece of string. So I've been doing this for a long time now. I still dip in and out of therapy.
Yeah.
Things will come up where I will know that that is the right thing for me to
Hmm.
do. And I think from a professional perspective, it it's absolutely appropriate for me to be working through my stuff. Um, so yeah, sometimes somebody can come to you and a session or two might do it, dependent upon what they're coming for. I remember a counsellor coming to see me and she had a fear of the dentist and she was so skeptical of hypnotherapy. And in my mind, I was thinking, I really don't know why you've come because you're shutting it down from the get-go. She had one session with me. And in that one session, she was able to have a full treatment in the chair without having a panic attack. Now, that for me is a success.
Yeah.
She hasn't necessarily completely got rid of her fear of a dentist, but she was able to have a full treatment without wanting to get up out the chair or having a panic attack. So that's a degree of success. But the more complex the presenting issue, or the more complex the issues that come up, then the longer time that we're probably going to work together. But the client's basically in control of that as well, because the more you embrace what your therapist asks you to do, both within and outside of the sessions, the more you will get from them.
And I'm glad that you said that, outside as well, because it's not all on the therapist every week you turn up. You have to do the work outside, don't you?
Absolutely. So the sessions will often be the key point of reframing a belief or reframing a program and starting to change how we think and feel about things. What we do outside will determine whether that builds momentum or not.
Yeah. I think that's just really important to kind of say, is like, when you do this work, you have to do the work. No one else is going to do it for you. And I always think that's a really nice thing to take into life, because then we're in complete control of our own life. And we can do whatever we want to do if we're willing to put the work in. Because if we're willing to put the work in here, we're willing to put the work in everything, every other aspect of our life as well. And yeah, it just kind of makes you more aware of your thoughts. I think that's with hypnotherapy for me. It made me more aware of what thoughts to let in, what thoughts to let go of, and also when I'm feeling a certain way, or if there's something I want to do and fear's coming up, and then it brings in the evidence and the memory, it goes, oh, I know what you're doing. It's okay. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but this is my choice that I'm going to take. Because I think people just look at past, well, this happened that time, so I can't do anything. And I think that's what happens sometimes with overwhelm and anxiety, isn't it? Like, people go, well, I can't publicly speak because I spoke when I was 10 in school, and I stuttered over my words, and I went bright red, so no, I just can't do it. So that's a belief then, and they keep telling themselves that they can't do something. Well, we can do something. It's just doing a breathing technique beforehand, getting yourself ready. And I always say this to my clients. I remember when you sent me some of the breathing techniques, the first ones that I ever did. And sometimes I was doing those breathing techniques for 20 minutes in the car, on the motorway, on the way to something. And I remember saying to you, is this normal? I have to do it for 20 minutes before I felt I could take a deep breath, that I didn't have that constriction in my chest. And you were like, yeah. And I think that again freed me to go, okay, I'm all right. I'm not, there's not anything wrong with me in a way. It's just the fact that I just have to breathe a lot longer with a certain breathing technique for me to be able to take a deep breath, to take myself out my fight or flight. And the more I did that, the less time I was in my fight or flight, or the adrenaline or cortisol. So I always use that story actually with my clients, because when people come, it's that first initial, when you've been living that much in fight or flight with anxiety, it is that work. The breathing techniques are just key, aren't they?
Absolutely. They just ground us into the moment. They help us to regain a sense of clarity through oxygenating the body appropriately, and not running away from how we're feeling.
Yeah.
It's sort of sitting with it, but helping to sort of support the nervous system whilst we're doing it.
Yeah.
And as I say to all of my clients, there's nothing wrong with us. We're not broken. We've got some dodgy programs that we just need to reframe.
Totally. And it's also regulating the nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't think people understand the nervous system so much, do they?
No.
Day to day, we kind of celebrate, oh, I'm busy, I'm on the go, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. But the more we're in that, the more it's not regulated.
No, and chronic busyness is just a coping strategy that often helps us to not sit with how we're feeling.
Yeah.
And there can be a host of things that are sort of at the core of that. But yeah, chronic busyness is an avoidance of how we're feeling. And it could be that maybe we don't feel good enough if we're not busy.
Yeah.
Or, you know, if we're not doing enough, what does that mean for us? What does that make us? Does it make us lazy? There's a lot of stuff that goes on around
Lazy's
the
the
whole
one that-
chronic busyness.
That lazy comes up a lot. Well, I'm not doing anything, so I feel lazy. Well,
Yeah.
no, you've got to rest.
Absolutely.
Like, I've been busy the past couple of days. I know I need 2 days rest now. And I love sitting in that stillness. But when I first met you, I didn't.
Yeah, no.
Not at all.
There was a lot of resistance to rest.
There was a lot of resistance where now I'm like, that is a priority in my life. So yeah, but what an amazing chat. Is there anything else that you want to kind of talk about just to kind of get out of, you know, people need to do this work, don't they?
I think everybody could benefit from it to varying degrees. But yeah, I've never met anybody who wouldn't benefit from this work. I think as well, one of the key things is recognizing that therapy shouldn't be your entire life. It should be something that supports your life, which is why I'm such a massive advocate of rest and fun and play and downtime, because it can get really heavy when our whole life is revolving around trying to make ourselves feel better or get to the core of why we're a certain way. Therapy should be something that supports us. It shouldn't be the whole aim of our life. And that's what I really sort of encourage with all of my clients.
I love that. And yeah, lastly, what you always told me was get some good music on and dance around your kitchen.
Absolutely. If you've got that hot energy, dance it out.
Totally. And I think that is just absolutely perfect. So thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, the most amazing chat. And you are just one of the most amazing people I've ever met. So I'm just thrilled that you came on to chat about it today. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'm so glad we met.
Yeah.